So this week we learn Parshat Vayechi. Yaakov Avinu blesses, gives brachas to his 12 great children, the 12 tribes of Yisrael, Yud Beis Shifteka. And the halachic topic we are discussing today is a most relevant one, Yissachar Zevulun. And I am constantly asked about the concept of Yissachar Zevulun. Is it positive? Is it important? Is it different than just supporting Torah? And what is the essence of a Yissachar Zevulun agreement? And these questions come to me from both sides. The Zevuluns ask, is it really important? The Yissachars ask, is it kedai? Am I losing out? So today, I want to explain my unique interpretation of Yissachar Zevulun. And I know what I'm saying today is a chiddush, but I am so convinced that it's Torah Semes, and it has halachic ramifications. So in this week's parsha, Zevulun lachoif yamem yishkoin, v'hu lachoif oniyois v'yachosoi al tzidoin Yissachar chamoir gorem. Rashi explains, Zevulun were the merchants. They traveled the high seas, they did business, and they supported Yissachar, who was sitting and learning. And therefore, they get Sachar. Rashi does not mention shutfis, partnership. Rashi talks about support. But Rashi in our parsha, in our pusik, quotes the posuk in Parshas V'zois HaBrocha when Moshe Rabbeinu blesses the Shvatim. Smach Zevulun b'tzeisecha v'Yissachar b'yolecha. Rashi there writes, Yissachar v'Zevulun osu shutfis beineim. They made a deal. They had a partnership. So is Yissachar Zevulun just supporting Torah? Or is it some kind of an agreement, formal, contractual agreement, like a transaction? Rashi in Parshat Zevulun Brocha speaks about a shutvis. Rashi in our Parsha just speaks about the sgula and the chashivas of supporting Torah. Is this a stira in Rashi? Shulchan Aruch and Ramah, Simareish Mavav Yeredei Asif Aleph, speak about the importance of supporting Torah. And the Mechaber just writes, if a person can't learn all day on his own, he can be Mekayim b'mitzvah v'gisa b'yom v'layla. We could support another person. And that is what the Torah writes. So the Torah and the Mechaber don't speak about a contractual agreement. They just speak about the importance of supporting Torah. The Ramah writes that Yissachar and Zevulun yecholim lasos tanai. They could make an agreement. They could stipulate. They could make an agreement to share Torah. So these two Rashis seem to coincide with the Beis Yosef and the Ramah. Is this really a machlokes? Soite daf chof alef amud alef. The Gemara quotes a posuk in Shir Hashirim. Im yeten ish kol hoin beisoy b'yahavo boiz yevoizu lo. Im yeten ish kol hoin beisoy b'yahavo boiz yevoizu lo. Lo k'Shimon achi Azari v'lo k'Rabbi Yochanan de ben Asiya elo k'Hillel v'Shavna. And Rashi explains, Shimon achi Azariah, he is mentioned in Zvachim Beis Amud Aleph. Who was Shimon achi Azariah? And if Shimon was the brother of Azariah, probably Azariah was a giant. Rashi explains, Azariah was the businessman. Shimon was the scholar. And Azariah supported his brother Shimon. And that is why Chazal exalt Azariah to the level that Reb Shimon is called Achi Azariah. So Rashi says, Shimon Achi Azariah is great. Rabbi Yochanan de ben Asiya is great. The Nasi supported Rabbi Yochanan, who was the greatest first generation Ameroam of Eretz Yisrael. That's positive. About whom do we say, Boiz Yevoizu lo, Hillel v'Shavna? Hillel was very poor, and he learned Torah with Mesias Nefesh. Then Shavna came along, and Shavna wanted to purchase, to buy, make an agreement that all the Torah that you learned all those years, B'tchak, I want a part of that. Boiz Yevoizu lo. Rashi explains, and all the poskim following in Rashi's footsteps Yissachar Zevulun is only to the future. It doesn't refer to the past. It is only mekanu lahaba. But the Torah that was already learned, you can have no stake in that. You could have no partnership in that. And I ask, if Yissachar Zevulun is a transaction, why not? Lehefech. I could sell what I already have. I can't sell what I don't yet have. But by Yissachar Zevulun is the other way around. To the contrary, it is only relevant mekan el haba. Like Rabbi Yochanan the Ben Asiyah, like Shimon Achiyazari. It doesn't work on Torah that I already learned. Why not? So this brings us to the fundamental question, and I want to stress, we find l'cha'oida 3 different approaches to Yissachar Zevulun. I quoted Rashi in our Parshat, Parshas Vayechi. Zevulun supports Yissachar, and therefore he has part in his Torah. Rashi Parshas V'Seira Brocha talks about partnership, shutfis. The Machabes speaks about supporting Torah, and the Tur as well. The Ramah talks about a Tanai. Is it partnership? Is it a formal agreement? Or is it just a Sgula, Schar Mitzvah, supporting Torah? Seem to be 3 different approaches. Rashi, that I quoted a few minutes ago regarding Shimon Achiyazariah, Rashi writes, Hisnu beineim. Hisnu beineim. They made an agreement. Rashi doesn't mention shutvis, partnership, but he does say they made an agreement. Is it just supporting Torah? Do you need a formal agreement? Is it a purchase, partnership? I think the 2 most fundamental, early, and important sources are Shuvas Maram al-Shekar, Simen Kuf Aleph, and Shuvas Avkas Roichel, the Beis Yosef in Simen Beis. And they have 2 opinions, 2 ends of the spectrum, 2 extreme opinions. And the importance of Maram al-Shekar is not only that he was one of the Rishonim, but this entire Shiva is a quote from Rav Hai Gaon. Rav Hai Gaon was the last and the greatest of the Gaonim. Maram al-Shekar Simakuf Aleph quotes Rav Hai Gaon, and he says, anybody that thinks Yissachar Zevulun is a purchase, a transaction, is a fool. Havle avolim. He quotes the posuk, Tzidkas atzadak olav tia, rishas harosha olav tia. You pay for your follies. You bear the consequences of your actions and deeds, and you cannot escape that. Tzidkas atzadak olav tia, rishas harosha olav tia. So what is Yissachar Zevulun all about? Says Maram al-Shekar. Nothing more than mitzvah tzedakah. You support Torah, and supporting Torah is a gevaldige mitzvah, and you receive reward. Nothing more than that. But it goes against Rashi, Osi shutvis beineim, hisnu beineim. So if it's just about supporting Torah, what kind of agreement do you need? What does an agreement mean? Does this agreement have any validity? It would be difficult to just throw aside these Lashonis that we find. Yes, it's about a Tanai. It's shutvis. On the other hand, the Beis Yosef clearly says, yes, it's a partnership. It's a deal. So that's the Avkas Roichel. 2 extremes. The Gadol that took Yissachar Zevulun to the extreme and presents it, defines it as a transaction, as a shutvis, is Reb Moshe, the greatest Gadol of our times. Igros Moshe Yerodei Chelik Dalet Siman Lamed Zayin has a very lengthy tshuva. What strikes us is Reb Moshe has a very lengthy tshuva about Yissachar Zevulun, and he has a very clear opinion, but he does not quote neither the Maram al-Shekar nor the Beis Yosef. And that's unique to Reb Moshe. It would be a terrible deficiency for anyone else. But knowing Reb Moshe's derech halimud, it's not such a big surprise, even though I think it does seem a bit strange. Because we're not only dealing with great achroinim. Reb Moshe constantly ignores the Noid Yehuda, the Sam Sofer, but this is the Beis Yosef. And Maram al-Shekar quoting Rav Hai Gaon, so we would expect Reb Moshe to address these sources, but he doesn't. In every tshuva, Neges Moshe, we see his greatness. Learning the sugyas, the Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, some Rishonim, and paskening halachas. But the more accepted derech is, yes, we do not just pass over 1,000 years of responsa of Torah Shebal Peh. Most of us deal with every one of the great Gedolim throughout the ages. So anyway, Maramal Shikar and the Beis Yosef are two extremes. The Reb Moshe takes it to a greater extreme. And Reb Moshe says it's a shutfas like a monetary transaction. It's a transaction like any other. It's a contract that is binding just like a monetary contract. It's like buying real estate. It's like buying anything else. It's a purchase. And that is why Reb Moshe paskins 4 psukim, all based on his fundamental approach. Number 1, there is no dinei kedima by Yissachar Zevulun. Any other tzedakah, there's a seder kedima. There's a list of priorities. Ani ye'irchu koidmim. Ani ye'eretz Yisrael. Family comes before others. Regarding Yissachar Zevulun, Reb Moshe says it's an investment. It's an investment. If I want to buy real estate and I'm looking for a good deal, I don't need necessarily to buy real estate in my town. I could invest in Hong Kong and Madagascar and Hawaii and Alaska, wherever I want to invest. It's an investment. So Reb Moshe says, no dina kedima. It's not medinei tzedakah. It's an investment. It's a deal. It's a transaction. Reb Moshe says the Yissachar is entitled to take more money than he really needs because it's a purchase. I want to put money aside. I want to have money to marry off my children. That is legitimate, and it could still be part of a Yissachar Zevulun deal. And Reb Moshe also paskins, if you want 50% of Yissachar's Torah, you need to give him 50% of your earnings. So if you make $10 million a year and you want a Yissachar, you need to give him $5 million. Oh, that is something most of us wouldn't like. Most of the Zevuluns wouldn't like. Reb Moshe also paskins, you can't take Yissachar Zevulun from Meiser, because Meiser is tzedakah. Yissachar Zevulun is an investment. It's a purchase. So you can't do that from Meiser. So all these halachas are based on Reb Moshe's fundamental approach. La'anius daiti. I never formulated this to myself and decided this is the way I will learn. It took years till I realized this is the way I do learn. And when I realized it's the way I do learn, I also decided this is the way I want to learn. But I realized at some stage that I have an atiyah, a fundamental approach to reconcile stiras. So in my derech, in my understanding, there is no contradiction between Rashi Parshas Vayechi and Rashi Parshas Zaysa. There are no machloikas in regarding Yissachar Zevulun. Kol hanacholim hoilchem en hayam. It's just a matter of emphasis and terminology. So the way I understand it, Yissachar Zevulun are shutfim. But they're not shutfim in the Sachar, they are shutfim in the Talmud. They don't have a partnership in the award or the reward. They're partners in learning. And it's such a logical concept. When two people learn together, they enrich each other. They learn better. They understand better when two minds come together. They talk it over, they analyze it. Kecherev al abadim. And therefore they're partners in learning. If Yissachar is desperate, he can't provide for his family. And he can't learn b'yishuv adas. He's troubled, he's worried. And it diminishes his learning. And Zevulun steps in and he supports him. So Yissachar could learn better, with more calm, with more clarity. It is as if they're learning together. So when a person learns with Chavrusa, they're both sitting in the Beis Medrash next to each other, they're learning together. By Yissachar Zevulun, Zevulun might be traveling the high seas 1,000 kilometers away, somewhere in the middle of the ocean, on a fishing boat, on a merchant marine. And Yissachar is sitting alone in the Beis Medrash. But potentially it is as if Zevulun is sitting right next to him. Because without Zevulun's support, Yissachar couldn't learn. So they are shutfim in learning. The sachar is just a side result. If they learn together, both of them get sachar. But the concept of partnership is partners in learning. It's not a purchase of olam haba. And that is why what Rashi explains in Soitach of Aleph makes so much sense. It is only mekanu lahaba. It has no effect lemafreya. If it would be a purchase in a sachar, we would say the opposite. I could sell what I have. I can't sell what I do not yet have. It's a davar shel abuli olam. It's not about selling. You can't sell anything. Rav Hai Gaon is correct. He's right. Tzidkas atzadak olav tia, rishas arosh olav tia. We are partners in learning. And that is why what Shavna suggested to Hillel is stupidity, is nonsense. Hillel learned Torah b'toich atchak. You can't change that lemafreya. You can't change that retroactively. You could have no part in that Torah. But from now on, if you support your Yissachar, and Yissachar will be able to learn better, he will be able to learn more due to your support, then you're a partner in his learning. So these three styles, or signoinus, formulas, is it about support? Is it an agreement? Is it a shutfus? It's all three. Fundamentally, it's not more than supporting Torah. The mitzvah of supporting Torah. So why do we need an agreement? The way I understand it. I'm a Rosh HaKollel, I'm a Rosh Hashiva, Baruch Hashem, I teach Torah. I dedicated my life to teaching Torah and to do chesed. But I also, it's a necessity, I also need to do some fundraising. And I profoundly thank my partners. I see them as partners, as Zevuluns. So it is different if you need to raise money and you don't know from where. And if you have partners that you know you could rely on them every year or every now and then. So having partners gives you an additional level of calm, of serenity. So when Yissachar is sitting and learning, and Zevulun from time to time throws in a few dollars, but he has no obligation, no agreement. It's a big mitzvah of supporting Torah. After all, he's supporting Torah. But if he has an agreement with Yissachar, and Yissachar knows somebody is caring for him today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, this month and next month, and the month after, it gives him an additional level of calm, of serenity. He knows that he's taken care of for the next 12 months, for the next year, for the next 2 years. That gives him an additional level of shmatze boyet selusa ki yoyme de istana. And that is the added value of Yissachar Zevulun. It's about supporting Torah. It's not a purchase. You can't buy Torah, you can't sell Torah. You can't buy Gan Eden, you can't sell Gan Eden. It's about being partners in Torah. It's like chavrus. So anybody that supports Torah in a way is a Zevulun. But if he has an agreement with a given Yissachar, it has added value. How much is that added value? 50%, 10%, 5%? No one could say. But there is added value. And that is why Chazal do speak, and the Rishonim do speak about an agreement. So, it's shutfus, yes. Not shutfus in Gan Eden, shutfus in learning. The Gan Eden is a result. But, so, it starts off with the schus of tamchen diurais, of supporting Torah. That's what it's all about. It's an agreement, because the agreement gives added value. And memel, it's a shutfus. We're partners, we're chavrusis, as if we're learning together. And this brings us to a question many dealt with. Does the Yissachar lose out? So some Gedolim understood Yissachar Zevulun. We share 50-50. Or Chaim HaKodesh has a stira. So Orach Chaim ala Torah, Parshas Kitiso says the Yissachar does not lose out. But he contradicts himself in Sefer Chayfetz Hashem. He has a Sefer and a few Masechtas, Brochas Davches. He says, God lanehenem yakia kappa v'yoysim me'erei shemayim. He says, if you're a Yissachar and you have a Zevulun, you need to split. He gets 50%, you get 50%. So it's a stira in Orach Chaim. Sefer Haflah, that unbelievable gadol, Reb Pinchas Halevi Horowitz, Talmud of the Mezritcher Magid, one of the greatest gedolim of his time, just to have an idea of his gadlus. The Noida Buda writes, I wanted to write a Sefer on Ksubis, like the Tzlach and Brochas and Psochim and Beitzah. But when I was planning to write my Sefer, the Haflah came out, and I saw after him I have nothing to add on. So I changed my plans. The Haflah in his Akdama writes, the Yissachar doesn't lose out. It's like Madlikin Mener Ner. If you light one candle from the other, candle number one, its light is not diminished. He gave light to another, but his light was not diminished. When you give light to others, it just enhances your own light. You're not losing out. That's the Haflah. Reb Meir Simcha Meshech Chochma, Parshas Vayechi, says, you split. You can't expect to keep your 100%. 50% goes to your partner. Goes without saying that according to the Moshe's understanding, you split your 100%. Everybody gets 50. According to my approach, no. Why would the Yissachar lose out? It is as if we both are learning, and I am learning together with him. When I enable him to learn, it is as if I am learning as well. So when two Talmidei Chachamim learn b'chavrusa, do they split the sachar? Why would they split? We're both learning. Each of us deserves 100%. To me, it goes without saying. Each of them gets 100%. The Yissachar doesn't lose out 1%, nothing. And the Yissachar doesn't get 50% of the Zevulun doesn't get 50% of Yissachar's Torah. He gets 100% of his own Torah. Yes, it's Yissachar's Torah. But it's 100% for Yissachar, 100% for Zevulun. Imre Bino was one of the greatest gedolim in Poland, the Rav of Kalish, Reb Meir Auerbach. At the end of his days, he was one of the gedolim in Yerushalayim. Chuvas, Siman Yud Gimel, he says, he tries to make a compromise between the two different opinions, and he says, Shnei dinim be Yissachar Zevulun. I generally don't like Shnei dinim. Why would we say Shnei dinim? One din. Somewhat complex. Supporting Torah, with an agreement, you become a partner. Partnership, supporting Torah, agreement. You're partners in learning. You're like a chavrus. And when a person learns with chavrus, he gets 100%. So does his partner. The Yissachar gets 100%, so does Zevulun. I have difficulty understanding how could it be different. It would be unfair. So Reuven and Shimon are neighbors. They both learn in the same kollel. They both learn Yom and Valayla. Reuven happened to have a very rich grandma, and she left him a big Yerusha. So he learns b'menuchas hanefesh. Shimon had no rich grandma. Nobody left him anything. He's supported by a Zevulun. Why should he lose out? Does Reuven deserve more reward, more sachar because he had a rich grandmother than Shimon? Why should he lose out? Doesn't make sense. Wouldn't seem to be fair. So Ledati, Yissachar doesn't lose out. Yissachar gets 100%. Why should he lose out? He's learning. So does Zevulun. Why should he lose out? It is as if he is learning, not instead of Yissachar, right next to Yissachar. Many people use my shtar for Heskem Yissachar Zevulun. Why? Because many Avrechim don't like to be a Yissachar Zevulun because they don't want to lose out. So I have my nusach. There is a Yissachar Zevulun shtar minchas osher. And at the bottom of the shtar of the document, it is specifies that this shtar is valid in accordance to the Minchas Osher Bereishis Siman Kufei. So the Yissachars feel comfortable with this shtar. I might be mistaken. We could all make mistakes. But if that is what the shtar says, that is what is binding. So many Yissachars, lav dafka from my koil, prefer to use my document because the document says that this Yissachar Zevulun is on the condition based on the interpretation of the Minchas Osher. Is Yissachar Zevulun unique to Torah or to mitzvahs as well? This is also a big discussion. Shlit Gaborim Bavakam Alamed Beis speaks about Torah and the mitzvahs. Chuvas Maram Al Shakar that I quoted, Rav Hai Goen, Torah and the mitzvahs. Then it's Sivin Meishav Dover. Chela Gimel Siman Yundalat says only Torah, and I think he's right. I think Yissachar Zevulun is a gift of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Why is that? We have a mitzvah to learn day and night. But anyone that understands human nature, any father that ever observed his children, any mechanech that ever cared for his talmidim knows, not all our children are destined to be scholars. That is not understanding human nature. They all should be kavei itim l'Torah. They all should be medaktik and b'mitzvahs. Not everybody has the ability to learn Yom V'Layla. But we have a mitzvah v'gisa b'Yom V'Layla. It's not Torah's Moshe, first Perek in Sefer Yoshua, but it's a mitzvah. So that is a chesed of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Smach Zevulun b'tzeisecho v'Yissachar b'yoholecha. If you can't learn yourself Yom V'Layla, support someone that could. Support someone that would. And then it is as if you are learning together with him. So to me, it's all about Torah and only Torah. So when you support people that are doing mitzvahs, you have Yissachar. There's a Mishnah Masechet Makas Daf Hey. Hanit belois aveda makabel nanish koiver aveda. Hanit belois mitzvah makabel Yissachar ka'oisa mitzvah. But it's not Yissachar Zevulun. It's not a real and full partnership. Yissachar Zevulun is unique to Torah. So in many Sforim there are stories told about Gedolei Yisrael and Tzaddikim who bound together. And they made some kind of an agreement, some kind of a covenant, of a bris, that we have a shared pool of Torah and mitzvahs, and whatever we do is for the entire Chabura. So some stories have it that the Marsha had a Chabura like this. Does that have to do with Yissachar Zevulun? I don't think so. Even if we broaden the scope of Yissachar Zevulun and we say it refers to mitzvahs as well, but the basic idea of Yissachar Zevulun is a Yissachar who needs the support of Zevulun. This one is doing business, this one is providing, and that one is learning. But the Marsha and his Chavraya, there were one Yissachar and another Yissachar and another Yissachar. They were all Yissachars. They just had a shared pool of Torah and mitzvahs. The Machna Chaim, this is a sefer I quote relatively a lot. Choshe Mishpat Chelik Beis Siman Chaf says, Sepura Maisiyos, fables, Ein la Maiden Memasiyos. He disregards the entire idea. But this is not just Sepura Masiyos. It's brought in Mavar Yabok. There's a very important sefer, deals specifically with the entire realm of death and afterlife. And this story is also told by the Shemek Doilim. The Shemek Doilim was the Chida on the Ra'avan. It's a biographical work on many Gedolim and based on the Aleph Beis. So the Shemek Doilim tells the story, an amazing story of two partners in Torah, partners in mitzvahs, Rabbi Chiel and Rabbi Shloime. According to the Shemek Doilim, we're dealing with Rabbi Chiel, the father of the Rosh, and his friend Rabbi Shloime. Rabbi Chiel suddenly passed away at a young age. At the Levaya, Rabbi Shloime uncovered Rabbi Chiel's face And he told him, remember our agreement. And Rebbe Chiel smiled. A miraculous story, but it's told by the Chidah and Mavi Yabok. The Marsham Chelek Gimel Siman Kuf Nun Aleph. You need to have a lot of courage to make such a statement. He writes that he heard from Reb Shloime Kluger that Rebbe Chiel laughed at Reb Shloime. And Rebbe Chiel meant to convey the message. I'm just up there for a few moments, not so long. I just died not so long ago. But I already became aware that our agreement is botel and mevotel and has no significance and no validity. So that's the Machne Chaim and the Marsham, who are two great Gedolim. But I have a different feeling. It's a story that does have significance, but it has nothing to do with Yissachar Zevulun, and it has no halachic basis. It's in another realm of Kabbalah, of mysticism, which I do not detract. I'm not mezalzel. But that is not for simple people like us. Some sources bring that in Yerushalayim there was such a group headed by the Maharit al-Ghazi, and that was in the days of the Chidah. But that is entirely above and beyond the realm of halachic definition and of our understanding. So this brings us to another fascinating and strange question. Could a person sell his Gehenim, or does Yissachar Zevulun only refer to Gan Eden? You won't believe this, but many years ago I was a younger man in Bnei Brak, and this question became relevant. There was a little girl that needed to be flown to America for a life-saving surgery. In those days, it was difficult to achieve funds. They needed $250,000, and they couldn't make it. So a person came, a lawyer, and he says, I represent a person, shachofetz be'ilum shemoi. And the reason he wanted anonymity is not because he was such a big tzaddik. To the contrary. So this person said, I have lived an awful life. I wasn't a shomer Torah. But I'm an old man and I regret it. So I am willing to give $100,000 if a person is willing to invest in my Gehenim. Strange. He didn't phrase it that way. I'm just taking it to an extreme. But he said, I want to pay money. A person should salvage me and take over my life, take over my Avedis. And the Gedolim didn't know what to make of it. So the Gedolim in Bnei Brak, on one hand, we need these funds, but could we promise the person that somebody is willing to make this deal and take his Gehenim? So what are you selling? Could you share with us? What are your assets? You know, in Ivrit there's an expression, chatul b'sak, cat in a sack. What are you selling? I mean, please, could you specify what you have? What are your assets? He didn't want to say. And we understand why he didn't want to say. Ada hochi v'hochi, he was so desperate. So his messenger came again, I am willing to pay the entire $250,000. And I was approached by one of the Gedolim, and I said, this is a story that happened 100 years ago. And there are 4 tshuvas of Gedolim dealing exactly with the same question. Not exactly, but essentially the same. So there was this poor man in a little town somewhere in Eastern Europe. And he had 10 daughters to marry off. Maybe. And one morning he comes home so happy. And he tells his wife, you won't believe it. I met a person in shul this morning. And he's willing to give me a monthly stipend, monthly support, 1,000 rubal every month. I should buy his Averis. And I made a deal. We signed a contract. Noshim Tzadkoni, she threw him out of the house. And he said, you're not coming back home until you bring a letter from the Rav that you retracted and your agreement is botel and mevutel. So what should he do? He went to the Rav of the town. And his Rav wrote letters, and he got tshuvas from 4 Gedolim. First and foremost, the Maharasham. I quoted the source a few minutes ago, Chelek Gimel Kuf Nun Aleph. The Machne Chaim. I quoted the source of 15 minutes ago, Choshe Mishpat Beis Memches. Even Yekora, Chele Gimel Simen Nun Beis, Zevulun Beneimim, Chele Gimel Simen Tzaddik Ches, and they were also Gedolim of that period. All four say, you could buy Gan Eden, but you can't buy Gehenna. No. That agreement is totally invalid. However, I told the messenger of Ploni Almoini, I think he should give the money. For two reasons. If he is willing to give $250,000, that means he did tshuva shalema. That reflects tshuva shalema. That reflects utmost regret. If he wouldn't be sorry, if he wouldn't regret, why would he pay so much money? And on the other hand, this is the greatest mitzvah. You're saving a life. Mekayim nefeshachas miyasol. You're saving the life of a child. Bezrat Hashem, surgery will be successful, she'll have a family. So you are the one that in your merit, there are going to be many families bebeis Yisrael. So I said, no, nobody could buy your portfolio. Nobody would buy your portfolio. But you don't need anyone to buy it. This is tshuva shalema. Tshuva mechaperes. Your portfolio will just evaporate. It will vanish like with a magic wand. And on the other hand, you will have the greatest mitzvah of matzal nefeshachas miyisrael. So this brings us to a question. Is it really impossible for one person to take upon himself the avedus of another, the punishment of another? Isn't that what Rivka told Yaakov? When Yaakov is afraid, what does Rivka say? I take upon myself the curse. So yes, could one person take upon himself the curse of another? The transgression and sin of another. Moshe Rabbeinu says, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to destroy Klal Yisrael, after Chet HaWegel, and Moshe Rabbeinu says, I want to be their sacrifice. Lo said Lavo, isn't that what Yitzchak would say? Shabbos Peites. Palga alai v'palga alach. You take 50% and I take the other 50. Doesn't this prove a person can take upon himself punishment of others? My response is a very clear one. Usually government workers, employees, there is what we call in Yisrael the takshir. There is a very clear set of payment. In each level, as you rise the ladder, well, you get some more compensation for your work. It is only top employees, CEOs, that have personal agreements, personal contracts. They make a lot of money. But it is only on the top of the ladder, the CEOs and the most senior management, tycoons. They have personal chozim, contracts. The giants of our heritage, the Ovis Agdoisha, Moshe Rabbeinu, they had a personal agreement with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's not the rule. That's not run-of-the-mill. No. You need to be Yitzchak Avinu to tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Pal Galai v'Pal Galach. And only Moshe Rabbeinu could tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mechenini Nasifrocha. And Rivka, the Tzadekas Rivka could say, don't worry, my child, Olai Kilalas, so I take it upon myself. We can't learn from the Ovis Agdoshim. The Ovis Agdoshim had a personal relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu like no other. So these are not sources in halacha. And I think those four Gedolim were right when they said there is no such a thing. Tzidkes HaTzadak, Olav Tia, Rishas HaRosha, Olav Tia, the pasuk that Rav Hai Gaon quotes. And this brings us to a more fundamental question. We say Kaddish for the deceased. We learn Mishnayos in their merit. We daven for the Umed in their schus. How could one do a mitzvah for another? Once again, as much as Baruch Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mezakeh to me to teach Torah, to define Torah, to be mechadish in Torah, but there are many things that are above and beyond the realm of our understanding. In another world, Olam HaNistar, B'derech min hadrachim, yes, there are zgulas. There are zgulas in which the living could benefit the dead, the neshamas of their family, their others, or even strangers. It is not something we could halachically define. I am saying Kaddish to the benefit of a deceased person. I don't know how to explain it, but I know it's real, because that is what we find in our early sources. So yes, on one hand, we make choices and bear the consequences. We pay for our follies, and we cannot expect anyone else to pay for our shortcomings. Tzidkas HaTzadak olav tiyeh, Rishas HaRosha olav tiyeh. But in some realm, yes, we could do mitzvahs to the benefit of the deceased. Kaddish, Mishnayos, davening for the Omed, and generally, whatever we do, especially if our parents taught us to do and they have input, yes, it is to their benefit as well. So just one last comment. I am very commonly asked by Avreichim, is it kedai to get into Yissachar Zevulun? Pele Yoyetz, one of the great giants of Musar. On Yissachar Zevulun, Ot Yud has very powerful words. Seem a contradiction, but they're not a contradiction. He strongly recommends this agreement for the Zevulun, strongly discourages this agreement for the Yissachar. For the Zevulun, he says, you could never make a better deal. Do it, go ahead. For the Yissachar says, if you only could, run away. Lani is daiti. Based on my understanding of Yissachar Zevulun, I have a different opinion. If you don't need the money, it's invalid anyway. Doesn't work. I explained before. The validity, the essence of Yissachar Zevulun is if Yissachar needs your support, and your support gives them the ability to learn more, to learn better, then you're a partner. So I tell the Yissachar, if you really need support, take it. You're not losing out. And it's a chesed. It's a chesed. Your Zevulun is earning. He making a great deal. He's winning. You're not losing. So why shy away? I encourage Avreichim. If you don't need it, don't get into it. Would be a chashash gezel. But if you need support, this is what you should do. You're not losing. And your Zevulun has the schus, as if he too is learning Yomam V'Layla. So today we discussed a fascinating sugya, fascinating topic, the sugya of Yissachar Zevulun. So it is this week that we say goodbye to Chumash Bereishis and Parshat Vayechi. And once again, the brachas of Yaakov Avinu. He'osfo v'gidu lachem es asher yikra eschem b'yachar es hayomim. Bikesh Yaakov l'galas es haketz v'rosh shenestalko memena shchino. Hitchaloi medvorim acherim. It is a medrash Rabbah quoted by Rashi and a Gemara Pesachim Nun Vav Amud Aleph. It's an amazing Gemara. Rosh shenestalko memena shchino. Suddenly the shchina left him, and Yaakov was terrified. And he says, Shemo yesh b'meitosi psul, ka'Avram sheyotze memena Yishmor, ki Yitzchak sheyotze memena Yosef. Amru bonav Shema Yisrael Avinu, Yisrael our Father. No, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And Yaakov was so gratified, and he cries out, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Eliyol Vod. That's the Gemara Pesachim Nun Vav. In the Medrash and the Zohar, there's a slight addition. When Yaakov Avinu saw that the Shechina left him, Nestalko Mamena Shechina, he says, Shemo yesh belibchem ala Kodesh Baruch Hu. Does anybody in his heart have any doubts, any anger, any bad feelings on HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And his children say, no, our dear Father. And Yaakov says, Baruch Shem Kavod Machus Eliyah. Why did Yaakov ask, Shem yesh belibchem ala Kodesh Baruch Hu? It could be 1,000 different things. Why the Shechina left them? Why was he afraid Shem yesh belibchem ala Kodesh Baruch Hu? This is a profound thought that we find both in Zohar and in Sifrei Kabbalah. In a way, and I emphasize, in a way, above and beyond the realm of our understanding, Adam Harishon was pogea and poigem v'gimel averes chamuris shebetoira. Avodah Zorah shvichas domem gili harayis. Sanhedrin Lamed Ches, Chazal speak about Avodah Zorah and gili harayis. Medrash Tanchum Parshas Masai. The Medrash says Adam Harishon was chayav golos kiroitzeach because he brought death to the world when he ate the Eitz Hadas. And the Avos HaKadoshim bear the responsibility to rectify and to fix the begam of these three Avedas. So the begam in Gili Arayis fell on Avraham to be metaken. And the derech of tikkun was by separation. Boirer oichel mitoich psoilis. Yishmael is the epitome, the essence of Gili Arayis. He was thrown over the fence. And Yitzchak is the zera of Avraham Avinu, Kodesh v'Toher. Yitzchak needed to rectify and fix the Aved of Shvichas Damim. So Esav is what Ish Damim. Esav is a murderer. Esav is a killer. He was pushed aside. Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Aholam is left to continue the zera. Kerem Beis Yisrael. Yaakov Avinu knew this secret. And he was aware that he needs to fix the Avodah Zarah. So, all his life, he is terrified and he is afraid. Whom will I need to sacrifice? My great father sacrificed one son, Esav. He was left with Yaakov. My great-grandfather had Yishmael, who was moved out of the camp, and he was left with Yitzchak. Yaakov observes his children. Kulam kedoshim, kulam brurim, kulam ahuvim. And he is so gratified, but he's afraid. And then, at the last act of his life, he kabtzu. And his children come together. And suddenly, and all this terror comes back to haunt him, and he says, maybe I am mistaken. Maybe I lived in denial all my life. Is there anybody present that doesn't believe? Is there anyone here in this room? Shem yesh belibchem ala Kodesh Baruch Hu. Whom do I have to sacrifice to be metaken avodah zorah? And his children cry out together. Ki ish echad belev echad. Ki shem shem belibchu ala Kodesh Baruch Hu em belibeinu shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem echad. And Yaakov says, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, Kavod Malchus Eliyah. That is what the Zohar teaches us. And other Sifrei Kabbalah. And I ask, how was Yaakov Zoicha? How? So how did Yaakov fix Avodah Zorah? Why was he different than Avraham and Yitzchak? The answer is, the Zohar Kodesh says, Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov is Torah Avodah Gemelas Chosodim. It's the other way around. Starts with Chesed, Chesed LaAvraham. Avodah is Yitzchak, the ultimate sacrifice of Kedes Yitzchak. Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Aholam. And I say, when the tikkun comes with Torah, there is room for everyone. When the tikkun comes from Torah, nobody is thrown over the fence. When the tikkun comes with Torah, no one is pushed aside. When the tikkun comes from Torah, it's not by separation. It's not by cutting off half and sending him away. When the tikkun comes with Torah, it is by purification, not separation. Yankov, Yoshev Aholim. Yankov represents Koyach HaTorah, and that is why Yankov was Zoicha. Mitosoi Shlemo. V'chol bonayach lemudei Hashem. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So when Yankov blesses his children, and it comes to Yosef, Yankov says, V'teishav be'eson kashtoi, v'yafoizu zroye yodov. Mi'edei abir Yankov, misham roye even Yisrael. Rashi writes, Even is an abbreviation, Nutrekon, Avhan Ubenan, Avoy Sabonim. That is Yankov's brocha to Yosef, and that is the brocha we all hope for and bench our children. Miyadei abir Yankov, Misham roya even Yisrael. Loika Avraham sheyotza memena Yishmael, loika Yitzchak sheyotza memena Esav, ke Yankov. And Yankov gives this brocha to Yosef. And we all bench our children. Yesimcho Elokim ke Ephraim uche Menashe. Yosef had the same blessing as Yankov. He had Ephraim and Menashe, both tzaddikim, both firmly within the camp. No one is thrown over the fence. And that is with Torah. And as we finish Sefer Bereshis, that's my brocha to all of you, to all my friends and all of Talmidim. Medei abir Yankov, misham roya even Yisrael, avhan ubenan. We should all have great nachas from our children. Yesimcho Elokim ke Ephraim uche Menashe, ke shvotim hagedoshim. We should all have nachas. We should all share b'seres tovas, and we should be zecher b'kol of Tobias Mashiach tzidkeinu, b'mheira v'yomeinu. Amen.